Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Karina, living L6S, where I live, breathe, do continuous improvement. We are on our Powerplant playlist, episode 9. I have my co-pilots here, Sierra, little Spartacus. All right, and we're carrying on with our fuel metering systems. All right, question. Which of the following best describes the function of an altitude mixture control? Answer: that regulates the richness of the fuel air charge entering the engine. This one's a trick question because they're going to try to throw in air pressure stuff. This is purely the fuel air mixture, the richness of that mixture. Question: select the correct statement concerning the idle system of a conventional float type carburetor. Answer: the low pressure between the edges of the throttle valve and the throttle body pulls the fuel from the idle passages. Note: in a conventional float type carburetor at idle, there is not enough airflow throughout the venturi to pull fuel from the main discharge nozzle. The idle discharge nozzle is located in the throttle body at the edge of the throttle valve, and all of the air flowing into the engine for idling must pass between the edges of the throttle valve and the throttle body. That produces a low pressure that pulls the fuel air emulsion from the idle passages. Question: on an engine equipped with pressure type carburetor, fuel supply in the idling range is ensured by the inclusion in the carburetor of. Answer: a spring. A spring in the unmetered fuel chamber to supplement the action of normal metering forces. Question: the economizer system of a float type carburetor performs which of the following functions? Answer: it supplies and regulates the additional fuel required for all engine speeds above cruising. You know, I didn't realize I had an accent until I started doing this, so I apologize if I say things weird. Yeah, let's make fun of it. I think it's kind of quirky. Okay, so next question. How will the mixture of an engine be affected if the bellows of the automatic mixture control, AMC, in a pressure carburetor ruptures while the engine is operating at altitude? Okay, ruptures at altitude. Answer: it will become richer. So there's nothing really holding, like the bellow isn't holding back that pressure anymore. Okay, next question. The fuel level within the float chamber of a properly adjusted float type carburetor will be. Answer: slightly lower than the discharge nozzle outlet. This is a trick question. Slightly lower than the discharge nozzle outlet. Note: this prevents fuel flowing out of the discharge nozzle when the aircraft is sitting in a level ground altitude. Question: the metered fuel pressure, chamber C, in an injection type carburetor, what? Answer: is held constant throughout the entire engine operating range. Note: the total metering force is made up of the air metering force across the air diaphragm between chambers A, B, the fuel metering forces across the fuel diaphragm between chambers C and D. The fuel metering force is a balance between the unmetered but regulated fuel pressure in chamber D and the metered fuel pressure in chamber C, which is held constant throughout the engine operating range. Question: Select the statement which is correct relating to a fuel level check of a float type carburetor. Okay. Answer: do not measure the level at the edge of the float chamber. Note, this is because of the tendency of the fuel to wet the walls of the chamber. At the wall, the fuel will be slightly higher than it is in the center. Okay, question. What carburetor component measures the amount of air delivered to the engine? Answer: Venturi. Question. If fuel is found running from the carburetor with the engine not running, the likely cause is that the what? Answer: the float needle valve is not seated properly. Note, when the engine is stopped, it's caused by the fuel rising in the float bowl to a level higher than the tip of the fuel discharge nozzle. A leak needle valve is the most likely cause of the fuel level rising when the engine is not running. Question. Fuel is discharged for idling speeds on a float type carburetor when? In a float type carburetor at idle speeds, fuel is discharged from the idle discharge nozzle, which is located opposite of the throttle valve in the carburetor throat. Question. When air passes through the venturi of a carburetor, what three changes occur? Answer: velocity increases, temperature decreases, and pressure decreases. Question. Where is the throttle valve located on a float type carburetor? Answer: after the main discharge nozzle and venturi, downstream. Question. An aircraft carburetor is equipped with a mixture control in order to prevent the mixture from becoming too, trick question. Answer: to prevent it from becoming too rich at high altitudes. Remember, you want richer mixture, I think, at the ground, and then thinner mixture because of the air to fuel ratio. So note, an aircraft carburetor is equipped with a mixture control to prevent the fuel air mixture from becoming too rich as the aircraft goes up in altitude and the air becomes less dense. Fancier words from saying the same thing. Okay, question. Which of the following is not a function of the carburetor venturi? Answer: regulates the idle system. That's something it does not do. It does not regulate the idle system. What it does do is it proportions the fuel air mixture and it limits the airflow at full throttle. Those are the two things it does do. Trick question. Next, idle cutoff is accomplished on a carburetor equipped with a back suction mixture control by, answer, introducing low pressure intake manifold air into the float chamber. Note, this low pressure lowers the level of fuel in this discharge nozzle so much so that the low pressure caused by the airflow flowing through the venturi cannot pull fuel from it. Question. One purpose of an air bleed in an airfloat in a float type carburetor is to, answer, decrease fuel density and destroy surface tension. What? One purpose of an air bleed in a float type carburetor is to decrease fuel density, okay, because you're mixing it, and destroy surface tension. Oh, like vaporizing it. Got it. All right, took me a second. Question. To determine the float level in a float type carburetor, a measurement is usually made from the top of the fuel in the float chamber to the what? Answer, to the parting surface of the carburetor. Note, the fuel level in the float bowl of a float type carburetor is measured between the parting surface of the carburetor float bowl and the surface of the fuel in the bowl, measured at the point away from both the float chamber wall and the float. So somewhere in the middle. Question. The throttle valve of a float type aircraft carburetors is located, answer, between the venturi and the engine. Question. Why must a float type carburetor supply a rich mixture during idle? Answer, because at idling speeds, the engine may not have enough airflow around the cylinders to provide proper cooling. Think about it. You're on the ground. You're not getting enough airflow. Question. What component is used to ensure fuel delivery during periods of rapid engine acceleration? Answer, acceleration pump. Question. The device that controls the ratio of the fuel-air mixture to the cylinders is called the, answer, say it with me, mixture control. Very good. Mixture control. Question. The device that controls the volume of the fuel-air mixture to the cylinders is called the, say it with me, this is different, it's a trick question, throttle valve. This is the volume of the fuel-air mixture is throttle valve. It's going to the cylinders. The other one was control the ratio. So your ratio is think about mixing. Question. Which statement is correct regarding a continuous flow fuel injecting system used on many reciprocating engines? Answer, fuel is injected at each cylinder intake port. Question. During the operation of an aircraft engine, the pressure drop in the carburetor venturi depends primarily upon the, answer, air velocity. Air velocity. Think about Bernoulli's principle for this question. Question. Which of the following causes a single diaphragm accelerator pump to discharge fuel? Answer, an increase in manifold pressure that occurs when the throttle valve is open. Note, the lack of suction on the diaphragm allows the spring to push the diaphragm over and force the fuel in the accelerator pump chamber out into the airstream. Question. At what engine speed does the main metering jet actually function as a metering jet in a float type carburetor? Answer, at all RPMs above idling range. Question. An aircraft engine continuous cylinder fuel injection system normally discharges fuel during which stroke? Ooh, this one's an easy one. Okay, say it with me. Answer, all the time, continuously. This is happening continuously. An aircraft engine continuous cylinder fuel injection discharges continuously. Question. What is the purpose of the carburetor accelerating system? Answer, temporarily enriching the mixture when the throttle is suddenly opened. Question. When troubleshooting an engine that will not idle, what would be a probable cause? Answer, economizer valve not operating correctly. Note, if the engine will not idle because of the mixture is too rich and the idle mixture adjustment on the carburetor will not lean it sufficiently, there is a possibility that the economizer valve is not operating correctly and feeding fuel into the engine. Question. What is the relationship between the accelerating pump and the enrichment valve in the pressure injection carburetor? Answer: no relationship since they operate independently. Question: what is the relationship between the pressure existing within the throat of a venturi and the velocity of the air passing through the venturi? So the pressure and velocity, what is the relationship? I don't know if this is like PV equals nRT, Bernoulli's principle. Answer: the pressure is inversely proportional to the velocity. The pressure, P equals 1 over V. Question: which of the following is least likely to occur during operation of an engine equipped with a direct cylinder fuel injection system? Answer: backfiring. Backfiring is the ignition of the fuel-air mixture in the induction system of an engine. When the valves overlap, it is least likely to occur in an engine equipped with direct cylinder fuel injections. This is because there is no combustible fuel-air mixture in the induction system. Question: what carburetor component limits the maximum airflow into the engine at full throttle? Limits at full throttle. Answer: venturi. Question: on a carburetor without an automatic mixture control, as you ascend to altitude, the mixture will what? Answer: be enriched. Question: during engine operation, if carburetor heat is applied, it will what? Answer: decrease the air density to the carburetor. Question: the desired engine idle speed and mixture setting is what? Answer: it is adjusted with engine warmed up and operating. That is a trick question. Question: a 9-cylinder radial engine using a multiple point priming system with a central spider will prime which cylinder? Okay, in a 9-cylinder engine, answer: these cylinders are 1, 2, 3, 8, and 9. Okay, so it'll prime all of the cylinders above the center line of the engine. That makes sense. Question: what is a function of the idling air bleed in a float type carburetor? Air bleed, air bleed, air bleed. Answer: it aids in emulsifying, vaporizing the fuel at idle speeds. Question: if the volume of air passing through a carburetor venturi is reduced, the pressure at the venturi throat will increase. Venturi is reduced by partially closing the throttle valve. The pressure at the venturi throat will increase. Okay. Next question, I have to look at this fuel-air ratio graph. Okay, refer to the figure. Which curve most nearly represents an aircraft engine fuel-air ratio throughout its operating range? Okay, so it's not curve 1, which is the top left. It's not curve 3, which is the bottom left. It's not curve 4, which is the bottom right. Curve 2 is correct because a richer mixture is provided for idling when scavenging is poor, and also for full power operation when extra fuel is needed for cooling. Question: what will occur if the vapor vent float in a pressure carburetor loses its buoyancy? Answer: The amount of fuel returning to the fuel tank from the carburetor will be increased. Note, that means the needle valve will remain off its seat, remains off its seat, and there will be a continuous flow of fuel back to the tank. Okay, that makes sense. Question, what method is ordinarily used to make idle speed adjustments on a float type carburetor? Answer, an adjustable throttle stop or linkage. This is a trick question. Question, what primary purpose is a turbine engine fuel control unit trimmed? Answer, to obtain maximum thrust output when desired. Which type of fuel control is used on most of today's turbine engines? Answer, hydromechanical or electrical. It's a trick question. Question, under which of the following conditions will the trimming of a turbine engine be most accurate? Answer, no wind and low moisture, so dry air. Question, true or false? Statement 1, the mixture used at rated power in an air-cooled reciprocating engine is richer than the mixture used throughout the normal cruising range. Statement 2, the mixture used at idle in an air-cooled reciprocating engine is richer than the mixture used at a rated power. Which one is true? Which one is false? Answer, both of them are true. Question, under which of the following conditions would an engine run lean even though there is a normal amount of fuel present? Answer, incomplete fuel vaporization. Note, this causes the engine to operate lean even though a normal amount of fuel has been metered. Okay. Question, during idle mixture adjustments, which of the following is normally observed to determine when the correct mixture has been achieved? Answer, changes in RPM or manifold pressure. Question, an indication that the optimum idle mixture has been obtained occurs when the mixture control is moved to idle cutoff and the manifold pressure does what? Answer, it decreases and the RPM increases momentarily before the engine ceases to fire. Question, the use of less than normal throttle opening during start will cause what? A rich mixture will be drawn into the cylinders. Question, when checking the idle mixture on a carburetor, the engine should be idling normally. Then pull the mixture control towards the idle cutoff position. A correct idling mixture will be indicated by what? Answer, an increase of 10 to 50 RPMs before decreasing. Question, when a new carburetor is installed on an engine, what? Answer, and the engine is warmed up to normal temperatures, adjusted idle mixture, then the idle speed. That's such a weird question. Question, the purpose of the back suction mixture control in a float type carburetor is to adjust the mixture by? Answer, regulating the pressure on the fuel in the float chamber. Question. Reciprocating engine power will be decreased at all altitudes if the what is whatting? Answer. The humidity is increased or increasing. Water vapor is less dense than dry air, so humid air has less mass and an equal volume of dry air, or then an equal volume of dry air. Question. If the idling jet becomes clogged in a float type carburetor, the what is whatting? Answer. The engine will not idle. Okay. Question. An aircraft engine equipped with a pressure type carburetor is started with the answer. Primer while the mixture control is positioned at idle cutoff. Primer while the mixture control is positioned at idle cutoff. Question. One of the best ways to increase engine power and control detonation and preignition is to answer. Use water injection. Question. An excessively lean fuel-air mixture may cause what? An increase in cylinder head temperature. Question. The density of air is very important when mixing fuel and air to obtain a correct fuel-to-air ratio. Which of the following weighs the most? Answer. 100 parts of dry air. That weighs the most. It's comparing it to 75 parts of dry air and 25 parts of water vapor, 50 parts of dry air, 50 parts of water vapor. Note, water vapor weighs only 5/8 as much as dry air. So more dry air will weigh more than the mixture of dry air with humid air or water vapor. Question. A mixture ratio of 11:1 normally refers to answer. 1 part fuel to 11 parts air. Oh, they're trying to trick you. Okay. So so they put 11:1 and then the answer is 1 part something to 11 parts something else, and they had answers of air, fuel, fuel, air. So just make sure you know the mixture is 1 part fuel to 11 parts air. Like imagine, like logically speaking, imagine it the other way, like 11 parts fuel to 1 part air. Like that doesn't make sense, right? So think about it. All right, question. The economizer system in a float type carburetor, what? Answer. Increases the fuel air ratio at high power settings. Question. A carburetor is prevented from leaning out during quick acceleration by the answer. Accelerating system. Question. In turbine engines that utilize a pressurization and dump valve, the dump portion of the valve does what? Answer. It drains the engine manifold lines to prevent fuel boiling and the subsequent deposits in the lines as a result of residual engine heat at engine shutdown. Question. What effect does high atmospheric humidity have on the operation of a jet engine? Answer. It has little to no effect. Question. What are the positions of the pressurization valve and the dump valve in a jet engine fuel system when the engine is shut down? Answer. Pressurization valve is closed, the dump valve is open. Question. What could cause a lean mixture and high cylinder head temperature at sea level or low altitude? We kind of covered a question like this. Answer: automatic mixture control is stuck in the extended position. Question: which of the following is not an input parameter for a turbine engine fuel control unit? Answer: ambient humidity. Pressure is a factor, temperature is a factor, but ambient humidity is not. Question: detonation occurs when the fuel-air mixture does what? Answer: burns too fast. Question: what corrective action should be taken when a carburetor is found to be leaking fuel from the discharge nozzle? Answer: replace the needle valve and its seat. Question: a major difference between the Teledyne Continental and the RSA Precision Air Motive or the Bendix continuous fuel injection system in a fuel metering is that the what is whatting? Answer: the Continental system uses fuel pressure only as a metering force. Note: the Teledyne Continental system does not use any air metering forces, but rather it produces a fuel pressure across the metering jet that is proportional to the engine speed. This accurate pressure is produced by an engine-driven vane-type pump and a calibrated bypass orifice. Question: the function of the altitude compensating or aneroid valve, A-N-E-R-O-I-D, aneroid valve, used with the Teledyne Continental fuel injection system on many turbocharged engines is to answer: prevent an overly rich mixture during sudden acceleration. Question: the primary purpose of the air bleed openings used with continuous flow fuel injector nozzles is to what? Answer: aid in proper fuel vaporization. Woo! All right, that was part 9, fuel metering systems. Part 10, we're going to do engine fuel systems. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe.